What was your experience or thoughts, running your own agency
Mhm.
and then being on the other side of the court where you are the client to the agency, right?
Mhm.
You see
Mhm.
two different sides, right?
Mhm.
What was that experience for you? Or what stood out?
Well, um, for me, it wasn't as big of a difference. I mean, for me, there's a much bigger difference between being in house and
Mhm.
being actually responsible for all the deliverables versus being on the agency. And
Totally.
um, I still felt responsible at the end of the day, but there's a little bit more of a difference there. But all the work I've ever done is very entrepreneurial. The companies I've worked for are very scrappy startups. So there's always a very large sense of ownership on my
Mm.
behalf. And again, part of my journey, I've kind of always been like the head of marketing, even earlier in my career. So, um, the difference with running my own company and working for an agency itself was more just the focus
Mm.
and being able to focus and pick and choose the work I wanted to do,
Right.
right? Which is a huge luxury.
Oh, yeah, because 'cause you're not limited on creativity, right?
Right.
Sky's the
And
limit.
and working on one project versus 10 at a time, that's a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I was doing. So, like I said, it was more of a part-time gig, and
Yeah.
so I wanted to put the family first. So I didn't take on more than I could chew off, which
Mhm.
is very difficult and rare for me. so so yeah, so it's hard to compare is what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's interesting. I asked that specific question because I can relate, and I started with agency, and
Mhm.
then I was a client to the agency, and
Mhm.
then now I run my own business,
Mhm.
for website solutions. So to me, I'm
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I know somebody else that does this too
Yeah.
and have done it," but also sharing that experience is really valuable. So I appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing that. I
Yeah, of
wanted to also
course.
ask you, what inspired you to choose a career in marketing? Why not like sales or a different career path?
Yeah, I saw that question and I was like, wow, that's pretty easy. It's for me, it was all about content and creativity.
Mm.
Um, I didn't really choose it. Like I mentioned, I had just come back from the Peace Corps. And
Mhm.
so I've been in Africa for 2.5 years literally in the bush. And I was like, what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do? And I was living in New York City and I needed to get a job. And I just happened to,
Gosh.
by nature of like the universe and serendipity, landed in actually a quite large global cosmetics company in the marketing department, and got exposure to all the different areas of marketing. And I just loved it. It's a very natural fit for me, though, because I love content and brand creativity. I love juxtaposing left and right brain activities, but I didn't pick it. It's not like now when, all these kids are forced to specialize in something and then they try to pick their career based on that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't have that kind of path so much, but I do feel really lucky that I literally fell into something,
That's
you
true.
know?
Yeah,
I
because
mean, I
nowadays I hear a lot of people that it's hard for them to be passionate about something. They just feel like I
yeah,
just got to work and do it, and it's
right.
clockwork, right? But then I see the people that are really passionate about it, like you and I are
Yeah,
very passionate about marketing, right?
yeah,
And it's not clockwork to us. Like we'll
no,
work the evenings, like we
yeah,
just want to get it out ASAP, right?
yeah,
Any kind of
yeah,
content.
yeah,
So that's awesome that you
yeah.
found your passion in doing all that.
Yeah. I feel so blessed about that because I've had friends, and we all see people that struggle, like what am I going to do when I
Yeah.
grow up type of thing. And I really never had that struggle when I landed in marketing very early. And you could say it was like my mid to late 20s. I've never left. I've never questioned it. I've never had any regrets. And so when I saw your question, I was like, that's interesting, because it was nice for me to think back and be like, I'm a writer, so that's you know I love writing. I tried to go into
Nice.
journalism early on. When I was in college, I did an internship in
Mhm.
journalism and working at a newspaper, because I thought that would be a great thing for me. And people person, so I'll go out and interview people, and it'll be fun and da da da. But I couldn't stand working in a newsroom. And talk about hard work and tireless hours. And this was back in the day when they still smoked, like in the newsrooms, and they worked
Gosh.
literally around the clock,
Yeah, yeah.
and you get paid peanuts, nothing. And so I was like, that's a thankless
Wow.
job.
Oh,
And
that's
so,
hard.
yeah, but I did internships all through college. I thought for a while I wanted to be a lawyer, and I went and I did an internship at a law firm, and I hated that too, because I hated the way they wrote. I looked at the
Mm.
documents and I was like, this doesn't make sense. Why would someone write like this? um, so yeah, I mean, that was like my trial and error period. And then, just sort of divinely led and into this huge company where I was in a marketing department, and I was like, boom. Yeah,
Mm.
So
I guess it's the people that really struggle with the passion, maybe they haven't tried different things to know if it's going to spark their interest or fall in love with, right? But it
yeah.
seems like what you just did was, hey, the opportunity just was there and I landed on it and I loved it and I got more specific with what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and you know what? I came across a book. I should see if I can remember the name of this book. Probably about 10 years ago, and it's exactly what you just said. And it was written by more of like a millennial age person who was talking about how his generation is always constantly looking for their passion, and it's
Yes.
not about that. It's about working all sorts of different jobs. And it's the name of the book. It just came to me. So good they can't ignore you.
Hmm.
And the premise is that you do so many different things that you become so good that you get the job that's perfect for you, right?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting premise. And
It's like the mindset of um, if you let fear hold your back, you're
yeah,
not really gonna grow quicker. Like you're
yeah.
not gonna learn and grow quicker. So
Well, his premise was all about skills acquisition,
hmm,
acquiring all these different types of skills.
jack of all trades kind of thing.
No,
Not even that.
no, not really, because it wasn't like he was saying go be.
Interesting.
It was more about go do some work, get really good at a couple, some things, and then you become so uniquely qualified.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess I'm not representing it well if you're not understanding, but it's like, and then you become so good that they can't ignore you.
Gotcha. Maybe I'm just going on a different tangent. You're just going
Yeah,
on that. You're like, hey,
yeah,
well, I'm on
yeah.
this tangent
We
over
got to
here.
get aligned here, Jesus.
It's all my fault.
No, 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 no. But I've
Uh,
recommended it to younger folks who are like what you said, like, what am I supposed to be doing? And they love it.
what's the book name again?
So good they can't ignore you.
So good they can't ignore you.
Yeah,
There you go for our listeners right there.
yeah.
Now, you've worked for a handful of companies as a director of marketing, VP of marketing, and CMO.
Hmm.
How did you work your way up the ladder? Because there's a lot of marketing professionals that are looking to grow in their career.
Hmm. Hmm. So, I mean, I had a pretty quick rise in that sense when you put it in the title format like you just did, because I had that background of 10 years working for an agency.
Hmm.
So, skills
Yeah.
acquisition, I had acquired a lot of really strong strategic and tactical skills working in an agency. And so when I made the jump in house, I mean, I was, already fairly far along in my career in terms of being like in my mid to late 30s. And I also, another thing I did is, like I said, I work for pretty young startup type companies, and
Right.
so my first in-house gig was at Celerity, which, even though when I joined they had 40 or 50 million in revenue, they had never had a marketing department.
I've seen those
So
kind of companies.
yeah, so it was easy, well, not easy, but I'm a big convincer and negotiator. I was able to kind of align myself for that role in a way that I had what they needed to build that,
Hmm.
to build it from the ground up. And so I'm very entrepreneurial, and I think like an entrepreneur, and every company I've worked at, I act like I own it. Which is
Absolutely.
easy to do when you're working next to or near with the CEO,
Hmm.
but that's a mindset.
Yes.
And yeah,
What's
so
helped you to gain that or build that mindset?
I don't know, maybe a bunch of like strange qualities that are sometimes not good and sometimes good, like
Yeah.
things that, characteristics about me that, how a lot of characteristics they can have two sides of a coin, right? And so
Right.
taking ownership for things that aren't necessarily mine isn't necessarily a healthy.
Yeah.
It's like boundaries. So yeah, I never had boundaries. So I just took over.
I
Oh
I
my
do
God.
I do I do think it's too funny. I do think that it's very mature
Mhm,
um, to take full responsibility of the department, but also feel like every dollar you spend on any marketing strategy as if it's
mhm.
your own dollar. Because I
Yeah.
do see a lot of marketing professionals that just been left to right. We'll experiment. We'll see how it goes. Right.
Mhm.
Uh, piss off
No.
the CEO. Right.
No way.
Yeah. So I see that a lot for marketing professionals. They do
Yeah.
that, and it's very rare to find someone that's is running the department as an entrepreneur
Yeah.
and is taking ownership. So that's awesome,
Well,
and
yeah,
that's
and
a
like I
good lesson.
said, yeah, the nature of the companies I've worked at, like when you take the company of Celerity, they never had marketing. So every dollar that needed to build for my budget,
Hmm.
I needed to explain to them where it was going to go and what we are going to get for it. And those are most of the types of companies. I did work for one or two companies where I walked in with a very large budget. And so that was a little bit less of an issue, but that's still, again, it became my mindset. And yeah, maybe a little of having my own company and working for an agency, and everything was always, I mentioned the project management aspect, dollars and cents, and um, what are we going to get for it? People call it ROI, but it's sort of like you need to be able to explain to a CEO that doesn't understand the value of marketing, which is what
Mhm.
happens when you go work for younger companies. They don't always understand.
Right.
Um, I mean, clearly, companies that said 40 or 50 million and never had marketing didn't think it was valuable until a certain point when everyone told them it was valuable and they
And they're
needed to get
usually
it.
focused on sales more than anything.
100%.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
No, that's great. So
yeah.
what pretty much helped you to grow, just to clarify, was one,
Mm,
running your own agency, which honestly that in itself is a lot of
mm,
learning experiences, right?
mhm,
A lot of trial and error too, right?
mhm,
And adapting, and then being able to work for startups, owning that process. And I
mhm,
really think the big thing is the personality, the character, even deeper,
mhm,
the character of taking full responsibility and
mhm,
having that entrepreneurial mindset,
mhm,
spirit to like pretty
mhm.
much lead you into other companies. And that's helped you move up the ladder.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, and taking full ownership, like you said, like for that company. This is, I mean, because in marketing, we're responsible for the brand. That's the company.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything that falls out from that and all the tactics and whatever, yeah, I take it very seriously. Every dollar that I'm given as part of my budget, that I'm going to make good use of it.
Right. And for those that are listening, that could be a personality, it could be a character. I think character more than anything is changing your mindset be on how you actually lead, especially if you want to grow in the career.
Yeah.
And